Hello, welcome back to Sharks Happen. My name is Hal. I'm your host, going over shark attacks from the 1900s till present, mostly large sharks. We'll get started. We're going to head over to EP63, which is Reunion Island, and the date is February 14th, 2015. Talon Bishop is 22 years old, and her boyfriend are in the water. It's about 6:30 at night. They're 2 to 3 meters from shore, so you're talking, 10, 15 feet from shore. Waist deep water. They're standing there at 6:30 at night. Sundown is 7:15, so it's getting to that, shark feeding time as far as smaller sharks. And all of a sudden, Talon is bitten in the leg. Shark grabs her by the leg in waist deep water and starts trying to drag her off into the deep water. It's trying to drag her under, I'm sure, to take her to the deep water. And she's fighting it from taking her under, and she successfully fights it from taking her under. But she's taken back to the beach after she fights it off. Her boyfriend and bystanders get her back to the beach. By the time paramedics get there, she goes into cardiac arrest. They're able to keep her alive, get her back to the hospital, but she passes away on the operating table that evening. It's an attack by, they say, a 3.5 meter, so an 11-foot tiger shark got in there in waist deep water, grabbed onto her, and it did major damage to her leg and removed part of her buttocks. So she was bitten up pretty bad by that shark as the whole time it was trying to drag her off, which we're going to put this down as an attack and an attempt to predate by a tiger shark. Which we don't have a lot of those by tiger sharks yet. I'm going to have to go through, when I go through all these stats, once I finally get back to my spreadsheet, which is going to be a while from now. I'm doing a lot more research now into other things that's keeping me from getting into that. I'm researching things for the show directly and for the attacks, so I need to get into that before I get back to that. But we don't have a lot of those tigers trying to finish the job like that. They're usually a one bite and leave. So putting it down as an attack and attempt to predate. So tiger sharks go up by 1. That's our story of Talon Bishop. On a side note, her mother did go ahead and sue the mayor of Reunion Island, of that part of Reunion Island anyway, as the beach was closed to swimmers. There was no swimming, and the reason it was closed to swimmers is the sand, I guess, and the bottom, the floor of the ocean is like a black color. It's not, that bright color. It's like a black by what I'm reading, and it'd be impossible almost to see a shark coming at you if that's the case. So they weren't supposed to be in the water, and there were no signs posted, is what this lawsuit ended up going over. I did run across a Facebook article when clicking through the stories on this. I came across a Facebook page. I clicked on that, and I believe it's Talon's mother that's went ahead, and she's given updates on what's going on. And it sounds like sometime late in 2019 the case was thrown out, and she says, I think it's a more recent post of this year, because I couldn't see a date on it. Normally they'd put the date if it's a different year. So maybe it's from this year that they're going to appeal this. But there were no signs up, is what they're saying. And, if you're going to close the beach due to it being dangerous, you really should have signs up. So it'll be interesting to see. I would think that they're going to toss it out again. I don't think they're ever going to put the actions of a fish, the responsibility or obligation on a person. So I don't think that's ever going to work, no matter whether they try it or not. No matter how good their case is, that there should have been signs up and everything, I don't think they're going to be able to hold a person, even though they're authority, they run the beach, whatever they're doing, accountable for what a fish did. So that's just my opinion. We're going to put that down and move on. We head over to Port Kennedy Beach, which is in Perth, Australia, and the date is December 27th, 2008. Brian Guest is 51 years old, and he and his son are out and they're snorkeling looking for crabs. They're 30 to 50, probably 70, 75 yards from shore, and they don't say how deep the water is. Brian and his son Brian, so I think they're both named Brian, but the son is about 2 meters from his dad, so within 6-7 feet of his dad. and an attack takes place. Now Brian Jr., the younger Brian, can't see anything but blood going on. Can't see the shark, can't see his dad, knows that there's blood where his dad was, and he goes making his way to shore. At least I don't think he saw it, but what happened at shore, I think he did see what happened. But being 2 meters away, I can't see anything on visibility. Either visibility was poor or he caught some glimpse of something. But he makes his way to shore. At this time, at 7 o'clock in the morning, the bystanders are out, and one bystander had said they saw a shark out there rolling and thrashing in the water. And a police spokesman showed up and said that witnesses said that they saw something very violent and blood in the water. And they never did find Brian. They did find parts of his wetsuit, parts of his swimsuit the next day shredded. But they didn't find Brian. And his son, when he went to the beach, so the bystanders said they saw something violent happen, and shortly after that they saw a gentleman come out of the water and sit down on the beach. And that reminds me of the main attack with the mother and daughter out there in the water. When the mother was bitten, the daughter, it seems, was going to go and help her and just made her way to the shore because of what she saw. So probably both of those were in the same state, not even able to deal with anything on that situation. We're going to put this down as an attack and a predation. They said by a 13 to a 17-foot great white. Some of them are saying 5 meter, others are saying 4 to 5 meter. So I'm just going to say it's somewhere from 13 to 17 feet, great white, an attack, a predation. We're going to head over to Buffalo Bay, which is Western Cape Province, South Africa. The date, August 1st, 1998. Ross Taylor, 19 years old. He and about 4 friends are out doing some surfing. Doesn't say how far from shore, depth, even time. He's out, and the friends seem to be pretty close by him on their boards. And one of them says that they suddenly saw his board being pushed sideways and then him disappear in the water. So that's what the friends had seen. Ross himself, he says that he was laying on the board waiting, and he got clamped on the left side. So the shark came up to him from below on the left and clamped both of his legs in its mouth. So that must be what was pushing the board sideways. And then he says it threw him into the water. So that must have been when the friends saw him dragged into the water. Now he's under the water for a little bit, and he says he was hoping he would resurface, and as he did, he reached down and he was poking the shark in the eye multiple times, pokes, and the shark finally released its grasp on the legs and disappeared. His board was gone. It was nowhere near him, so he said he started making his way towards shore. He said he was paddling about 20 yards. He was able to make it. His friends were trying to make their way to him, and the water conditions were such that it was difficult for them to get to him and get him in. But they get to him and they get him in. He suffers lacerations to both of his lower legs. It doesn't sound like any arteries, any nerves were damaged in the process. He ends up being sewn up, and it sounds like we'll make a full recovery from the attack. He says he was lucky to be alive. I'm not going to put this down as an attempt to predate, though. I know that a lot of people want that he poked it in the eyes, but this is the same thing that they always do. Grab the surfer, grab him off the board. Most of the time, hold them under the water for a little bit. They get beat on. Sometimes they don't, but they usually release and they go away. So that's our attack on Ross Taylor. We're going to put it down as an attack, not an attempt to predate. They said that the great white was about 4 meters, so you're talking 13-foot great white in that area. Okay, now we're going to head over to a spot known as Davidson's, which is in Kauai, Hawaii, and the date is April 14th, 2017. Baboo is 28 years old, and he is out doing some surfing. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. He's 150 or so yards from shore. He's in 5 to 10 feet deep water, laying on the board. It sounds like waiting on a wave. Suddenly he's bit in the leg by a shark. He's bit in the right leg by a shark. He says that the shark is trying to pull him off of his board and underwater, so he knows this, so he holds on to his board as tight as he can with his left hand, which keeps the shark from being able to take him under, and he starts beating on the shark's head. So he's hanging on and beating on the shark. The people on the beach at the time, they're seeing a commotion in the water, and they're seeing the victim being dragged like side to side. So one gentleman had seen the thing happen, and he called 911 right away. Shortly after the beating, the tiger shark lets go. Baboo gets back up on his board, catches a wave, and he's making his way in. And he's yelling for help. People are seeing blood in the water behind him. So they go out, and about 6 surfers go out, and they make like a chain. They end up helping each other get him into shore. He gets into shore. They get him in. He ends up having his right leg surgically amputated about 12 centimeters below the knee due to the, just the severity of the bite to the leg. This has happened a lot of times with these tiger sharks. One of them I remember is that guy that was on his kayak fishing, and the tiger grabbed him like up by the shin, but it kind of shredded his whole leg until ripping off his foot when it got down there, kind of sliding off of him type thing. So they're brutal attacks. Those teeth on those tigers can do some major damage. So they weren't able to save his leg, but he survives. So we're going to put this down as an attack and not an attempt to predate by a tiger shark. They said the tiger shark was about 9 to 12 feet long. So very large tiger shark to have to deal with, and luckily he survives. Now we're going to head over to Tien-tu Beach, which is in northern Taiwan, and the date is September 20th, 1964. Tien-tu, he is 32 years old, and he has showed up at the beach at about noon, and they said he hung out on the beach for a while. About 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he ends up being seen going out to the warning line. A little bit of background on this beach. There's a warning line out marked with red markers, and I believe there's probably a drop-off right there or just past there where they're telling people, hey, you're going to get into deep water and get into trouble. So there's probably a good addition to depth right past those red markers. The second thing is the beach has been closed. It had been closed since the 7th. So for 13 days it had been closed, as there was a fatal shark attack 13 days prior on the 7th, right at the same beach. So beach is closed. Tien-tu goes out there, Tien-tu goes out there, and he is swimming, and the hawker, they call him. They don't have any lifeguards on the beach because it's closed, but they have a hawker. So that's somebody that probably looks for trouble and lets people know that. So the hawker sees that Ko is almost to the warning line, and then he hears him scream and start struggling. So he's being attacked. The hawker knows he's being attacked, but there's no swimmers, there's no surfers, nobody to go save him. The authorities are alerted, and they immediately launch a search. But they're not able to find his body until the next day. When they do find him, his whole thigh had been removed. So it sounds like the back of the thigh was just ripped right off of him. And that was the fatal injury to him. They don't say what kind of shark. Sounds like it's probably a tiger shark, but without any identification, there's no way to tell. All we can do is put this down as an attack, not an attempt to predate. Okay, now we're going to finish off our unprovoked attacks over at 7 Shillings Beach, which is in Middle Harbour, New South Wales, Australia. And the date is December 8th, 1916. Mr. and Mrs. Walter German are out in the water. It sounds like they're swimming. Mr. German is 41 years old. They're not swimming together because Mrs. German is about 10 meters from shore when she is attacked. She is bitten in the leg. It says nipped in the leg, but she's bitten in the leg, and she screams for help. Her husband swims up to her, so he wasn't right with her when she was bitten. Swims to her and starts swimming her into shore. They were 10 meters where she was bit. They get to 1 meter from shore, and that shark attacks Mr. German. It gets him, it had to have gotten him by the leg. You're 1 meter from shore, you're in some shallows, and dragged him. It was able to get him off of his feet. He wasn't in there long, it sounds like, and Mrs. Evans was able to come out and help probably Mrs. German, get Mr. German up out of the water. The problem is the wound. The wound to Mrs. German, she had lacerations in her legs, so she was able to be sewn up. The problem with Mr. German is there was a 1 foot by 8 inch opening in his lower chest, removing most of the sternum. And when Mrs. Evans came out and was bringing him into shore, she said that she could see his heart beating. So the bite was so bad that it exposed his beating heart to the rescuer that took him in. He ended up passing away, of course, probably shortly after reaching the beach. And we're going to put this down as 2 attacks, an attempt to predate. I'm not going to put Mrs. German as an attempt, but I am going to put Mr. German as an attempt to predate. So 2 attacks, 1 attempt to predate, 1 fatality. We don't know what kind of shark. Okay, before I get to the ending segment, I want to go over just a few things I wanted to tell you. First of all, on the community board, instead of in the videos, I'm going to post these to the community board. I'm going to put up a video that you really should see on breaching sharks from Shark Bites. It's another YouTube channel. Shark Scientist. I can't be more impressed with a shark scientist than with this Christian. He is very young to be keeping things in perspective. He doesn't just take in information and make assumptions from that. He's more like Baldrige, where he takes in the information, he looks at it, and he says what he thinks and explains that, he doesn't have enough. Like Baldrige would tell you he doesn't have enough, or he would look at Coppelson's statement on warm water attacks and say, look, he doesn't have enough to even judge that off if he's not keeping it in any kind of a perspective. But this Christian does. The videos on breaching sharks, you're going to see these basking sharks launching themselves out of the water, and he's going to give you his theory as to why. I think it is a very sound theory, and I would actually agree with it. I would think that that's the only reason that they would be doing that. I don't think that anything would be chasing them out of the water, and they're krill eaters, so I don't think they're going to be launching themselves out of the water to try to eat krill. So it's a really good video. That one will be on the site. Another, I'm going to put up it's going to be an article, and the article is on shark bites and how they come up with the length of a shark they have both bite width, they have bite diameter, and they have a formula they go through. It's not on any of the things in the article. This is for the photos that are in there. I'm going to post that on the link too, because you got to see this 1 leg photo in there. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. You hear about it, denuded bone and all this thing, but when you see it and, there's leg left below and above and just nothing there in between, it's the weirdest thing I've seen, I guess. So I wanted to get into that. Another thing that I want to get into is, came across a marine biologist. It said, marine biologist answers the most Googled questions on sharks. So of course I have to click on that. So I click on that, and this woman is sitting there, and she gets to the question I'm there for. Why do these sharks attack? Why do they bite? And she comes off with the no hands, one of the no hands people. And then she has the mistaken identity. And then she has, sometimes the sharks are scared. And then I forget what the 4th is, but she's missing territorial and out to eat you. That's most of the attacks. Most attacks are just territorial attacks, at least by large sharks. I mean, of course, she's probably talking all sharks, and of course, she's a marine biologist, which that means the same as me saying I'm a machinist. That doesn't tell you anything. That tells you what field I'm in. That doesn't tell you if I'm a grinder, if I, EDM runner, if I go ahead and I'm in purchasing sales. It doesn't tell you what I'm doing in machining. And the same thing, marine biology does not equal a shark scientist, a shark expert, any of that stuff. To leave those 2 out, it led me to this new realization that I think that I'm going to make another of these comparisons people aren't going to like to another science, which is global warming science. After Al Gore won his Nobel Prize and people weren't taking him seriously, he had to take himself to schools here in the U.S. And he would go to these schools and talk to gyms full of the students, these little 15, 16, 17-year-old kids. And he would tell them straight out, and it's on video, and you know better than your parents. Your parents don't know anything. You guys need to start thinking for yourselves. Well, they got to bypass anybody that has any real world experience. They might have something called common sense and call bullshit on what they're saying. But these kids aren't going to know any better. So it seems like to me marine biology is targeting kids. They don't care what we think, they don't care what we hear, they don't care what we know. They don't care about us at all. They're just worried about the future and those kids. And they'll have them believing that sharks are your friends. Sharks don't bite people to eat them, and sharks don't bite people just to keep them out of their area. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But you know, I don't know why they do it, but marine biologist does not equal shark attack expert. So anyway, we're going to finish off our show today with What You Been Eating, Shark. And we're going to go back to 1992 off of Oahu, Hawaii. There was a Zosimo Popa is his name. Him and his son Jeffrey had gone out, and they went out off of Oahu, and they were doing an overnight fishing trip in a 14-foot boat. They never returned. A search had shown a debris field, but they never did find a boat. They never did find little Jeffrey. Well, little Jeffrey, I don't know how old he was. But the father had tied himself to something that floats. I can't remember what he tied himself to, but they found his corpse floating in the water because he tied himself to something. And he passed away. He had water filled with lungs. He drowned, of course. And they ended up finding 2 bites on him. And they were both on his lower back. One was, well, they were both about 1.5 inches wide and 2 inches long, and that means that a cookie cutter shark ended up getting at him. The bites were post-mortem, but you know, it's 2 bites, and it's better to be post-mortem than bitten beforehand. I'd rather have the shark, you know, take a couple little scoops. I call them ice cream scoops. Take a couple little ice cream scoops out of my body after I'm gone, rather than before. Kind of like with the, you know, the shrimp net guy that was by the sandbar up to his neck in water, and the shark bit him in the shoulder, biting his arm off by biting his shoulder, and then bit his head off after that. I'd rather have those events happen in the other way. So that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed the show. I'll be back in a few days with another show of attacks. But remember, if you go into that water, you are much more afraid of those sharks than they are of you.